And now this is still teach and assess. This is 1.6. And you can see that this one's quite a thick one. Let's get started on it. Teach and assess. How does the candidate actively engage students in deep learning, always higher order thinking, of content, and monitor, assess their understanding, and establish next steps for learning? There are three pieces here. One is deep learning of content. Second one is monitor and assess. And the third one is establish next steps for learning. So there's a lot in this one. So if we look at level 3, we're ignoring that 1 and 2. Candidates' instruction and assessment requires students to engage in higher order thinking, deep learning. Okay, so that's going to be the first one. All right, so we got the deep learning here. Candidate monitors student learning to check for understanding. That's the second piece here. And the third one is provides next steps for learning. So we got all three of them there. And as I write over here, there are three things. Instruction and assessment must both engage students in higher order thinking. For instruction, make sure that your work from a good, rich, focused question gives students opportunities to work out a problem, present their own thinking, and involve talk, pair shares, and discussion. Okay, so that's the first part. For assessment, make sure that your prompts and questions have enough room for students to express how they are thinking, offer them connections to other important things, and allow them to pull together their learning in some kind of synthesis. That's all higher order thinking here. Next part. You should specifically annotate all the instances where you pause to check in on how your kids are doing, every question you ask to see what they are thinking, and more formal moves, exit ticket quizzes, closing talk. All of these are not incidental, so if you stop and just listen to kids, make sure you've annotated it for a check for understanding. Okay? And with every check-in, annotate as check for understanding and higher order thinking. So you can do more you can annotate them with more than one thing. Every instance where you give students feedback or direction, so use both of these, check for understanding, higher order thinking. Every instance where you give students feedback or direction to move them a little bit further. Describe these as giving next steps for learning. So any kind of feedback, you could be doing this next, is also a way of giving a next step for learning. Also annotate your closing comments where you tell students what will be coming next in the lesson. So that's the next steps for learning as well. Okay, so there's a lot in this one. For level 4, candidates' instruction and assessment provide students opportunities to actively develop their own understandings linked to lesson goals. That's kind of vague, but it's okay. This is the part that probably matters more. Candidate monitors student learning throughout the lesson and adjusts instruction for the whole class. So it needs to be evident that you're always checking on their learning, but also that as a result of those checks that you might change a question, you might give a different bit of information, anything you might do in response to what they've told you or shown you. I put make sure students are doing this for themselves, give them opportunities to work things out, materials for them to work with, opportunities to work with each other, avoid hand-holding and step-by-step instruction. How are your students in charge of their own learning? The second, purposely note how you positively and productively adjusted your teaching in response to your checks for understanding. Okay, so that's to move to a 4. Level 5, candidates' instruction assessments promote inclusion for all students, providing opportunities to participate in classroom discourse as members of the community. This is why discussions and talk are so important across this. That's the way we know what kids are thinking. Those are the places where higher order thinking may come in. Talk is also the place where you get to assess and see what their thinking is about, so you might make adjustments. So you want to have places where kids are talking, interacting in ways that you can do something, in ways in which you can do something with. So the other part, students independently facilitate their own work, either in whole class, small group, or individually choosing how to advance their learning. Okay, moves to level 5 always involve inclusive teaching practice. So across all these rubrics, how are people involved as a community, with each other, supporting and moving each other learning, where it's not all teacher-directed. Use the creating positive environment annotation to focus on how you brought students together to share in their learning with you and with each other. And this does include your work to ensure that independent work is productive. This happens from your clear expectations for engagement and access to materials. So as you're setting them out to work independently, remember it's a result of your clear expectations. So use that annotation. Okay, setting expectations, and then the kids are working well on their own. It's because you set out clear expectations.